Hello, everyone. I am Steve Wolfson, a Jeffrey Wolf Green trained evolutionary astrologer. And I give my typical opening because what I have been doing on EA Zoom for the last few years is not typical astrology talk most of the time. And what it is for me is that I deeply imprinted the teachings of evolutionary astrology. And then at a certain point, I started seeing the places in my life that were being brought up for me to deal with that came from the wisdom that I had learned in evolutionary astrology. It's one thing to know things mentally, and it's another thing to how do I apply what I know to the messy places in my own life. That has become the focus, central focus in my life. And so I have been talking about these various subjects for quite a while now. There's a phenomenal amount of astrological wisdom on this channel, is my opinion. And the gist of it is I can learn all these things and it's valuable to do so, but how do I apply it to my life? And that is not all I find, that is not always obvious. And that's why I have been speaking as I have, because that's what's going on in my own life. So I strive to be very vulnerable and self-revealing here, in that, I'm on the same process, the same journey as any or all of you that are listening here that are interested in the topics I'm talking about. I guess I should stop and say, this one is called The Perfection of Imperfection, Life's Inherent Messiness. And I'll talk a little bit about what does that mean to me. Most of we humans, we have these ideals of what I would like life to be. I think it's reasonably fair to say that the great majority of we humans would prefer if we had a life that didn't feel like it had a lot of suffering in it, a lot of pain in it, a lot of loneliness in it, a lot of emptiness in it, and that we could have more and more and more good times, good experiences, of happy experiences that we love and appreciate. And that's a pretty reasonable expectation. Very few of us find that that is the way that a life goes with much consistency. We can have periods, episodes, times, even extended periods of time when that's what's going on and it feels wonderful and we have gratitude and it's awesome. And then we have other times when other things are going on that we do not consider or feel are so awesome. And, it's pretty reasonable to want to have more of the stuff that feels good and less of the stuff that doesn't feel good. That's a pretty reasonable expectation. But we find out over the course of living that it doesn't always work that way. We can go through stages of, I'm going to change it, what I call the beginning stages of spirituality. I'm going to pray away, mantra away. I've heard somebody call it yoga away. The negative places inside of me, the fear, doubt, insecurity, selfishness, all this. And my positive thoughts and actions, I'm going to manifest the wonderful things in my life, and I'm going to help the people in my life that are clearly in pain, that are not having the kind of life I'm thinking about having, to improve their life and help them be happier and so forth. These are all very admirable desires and intents, and nothing that I have to say is implying anything other than that. What I say, though, is that realistically, that is not the life most of us are having with consistency. And I've come to the point of realizing we're not having that kind of life with consistency, because that's not really why we're here. We're not really here to have everything be hunky-dory and to our expectations. In other words, what would I consider perfection? If I got all the stuff that I think I want, and I got very little of the pain and hurt and loss and all this that I don't want, would I might consider that a perfection. And then when you take it a step further, it goes to the place of, well, why isn't my life like that? It certainly should be capable of being that way. I got all these tools, manifestation and positive thinking and et cetera, and that's not really happening. So what is it? And then it can tend to go to the place of what I now call seeing life as a reward and punishment system. Back in the old days, it was kind of like, well, if you were doing what God, whatever that meant, if you were doing what God wanted, then all these great things are going to happen in your life. And if you're not having all these great things happen in your life, consistency, then you're clearly not pleasing God. So God is not dispensing to you all the stuff that you think you want. Now, at this point in my life, I would say that actually is a human projection onto what we call God, that God has the same sort of wants and likes and dislikes and so forth that most of we humans have. And I don't think that's really the way it works. Then we get into the realm of so-called good and bad karma. And if I've had a very difficult life, and God knows there's a whole lot of people that have had very difficult lives. If I had a very difficult life, then this must be because, or one way of looking at it, I must have been really crappy a lot in my past lives, and now I'm reaping this karma for what I have done. And the end result of that is it creates feelings of inadequacy, inferiority. I am bad, I'm defective, I'm not good enough. And some people walk around with that inner attitude, and they are down on themselves and feel small, and other people, not wanting to feel any of that, adopt a different strategy along the lines of what we call narcissism and various shades of it, which may not be as extreme as narcissism, where they're walking around with a need to feel better than what they see around, because that feeling better than is a defense against feeling what lies below the feeling better, which is a deep sense of inadequacy. If I need to feel superior, then it's really a statement that somewhere in me I feel inferior and inadequate, and I am compensating for that by trying to be more than, because I feel less than. If I'm accepting in the moment of what's going on in life and around me, not an easy state, to sustain, then I don't have a need to feel less than or more than. I can be present. The amazing part is that we're not really intended to be what we define as perfect. I get visual images sometimes when I'm talking. So with that one, I just got the visual image of the good old saying about the donkey with the carrot on the stick. And the donkey drives itself along because it wants the carrot, and it never gets the carrot. That's the setup. It never gets the carrot. When we are striving for this state of perfection that always seems about 2 or 3 feet away, just like the carrot on the stick, I'm so close, but I can't get it. This is our idea of perfection, and it's never enough. In other words, where I was 10 or 20 years ago, I'm not there anymore. I strove to be more than where I was. Well, guess what? Over that 10 or 20 years, I have come closer to where I wanted to go 10 or 20 years ago. But as I have moved forward, my expectations of where I wanted to be have moved forward along with it. So just like the donkey on the carrot, where the person is driving the horse, I already am most of the way to where I wanted to be 10 or 20 years ago, but it's not enough anymore. Now I want more. So you can't win in that situation. Now, and here's the part that took me a long time to understand. I can realize I'm chasing the carrot that's on the stick that I'm never going to reach. That's a mental knowing or insight. That insight is not enough that I'm just going to be able to stop. I'm just going to stop doing that. Well, it's just not that simple. It's not that simple because in a lot of ways of the biology of being a human being, because we have a whole nervous system and a whole history, and we have a biology of physical form of body that through evolution is wired to stay alive. And this body has experienced all sorts of shocks and traumas down through its lifetime. And if you grasp, and if you go to the place of understanding or believing or seeing past lives, the same thing's been going on for a very long time. So what it is that we have what I call interpretations of reality that are very deep. We cannot just drop them like that, because they actually have protected us very well. You get to a certain point and you start realizing that my tendency under certain circumstances to get argumentative, to get defensive, or to shut down or to freeze, they're not wrong, but they're no longer really helpful. They're not really serving me or getting me where I want to go. And I don't know how to be any way other than that, because that is an automatic response that's been going on forever. There's a term for it called hijacked. We can be in our adult self, what I call being myself. And something can come along, or someone can say something, or some incident can occur, or somebody can cut me off in traffic, or any number of things. And all of a sudden there's a part of me arising that is not the same adult self clear person I just was. It automatically arises and it has a life of its own. This is closely related to trauma. And what we're actually needing to do and working with at this time is becoming aware of these automatic responses. Most of I mean, they're unconscious, subconscious, and the fact that they're unconscious and subconscious, the symptoms are, I don't even know they're occurring in me. All of a sudden, I'm acting in a very different way than the person I like to think that I am. There's something in there that takes over. So the summary of it is I have finally begun to realize that, because I'm not happy about that, especially if when one has moved on to spiritual paths, we don't want to come from those places. And further, they get labeled by these paths in many cases as negative emotions that are less than and lower than, that are holding us back from the purity and the goodness of the light and love and all this. And that's another, to me, that's another trap. I've been in that trap sometimes for a long time. I say at this point, I don't think emotions are negative or positive. I think the negative emotions get a bad rap. I'm not saying we should run around yelling at everybody and this is some kind of virtue. I'm saying there are reasons why, very valid reasons why, people have the patterns, the traits, the tendencies that we do. And if we could see the story, the life, that a person that is acting in certain ways that are, that I don't want to be around and can't stand, it would change it has at times changed my perception of that person. It goes from being angry to feeling compassion. It's not that I can change that person. I've tried that. It's not that I'm necessarily going to change them, and I don't need to subject myself to certain behaviors or tendencies in order to, quote, be a loving person. Number one rule, as they say, for me, is I got to put my oxygen mask on in the plane before I start helping other people or kids putting their mask on. And this is, to do that requires having a sense of self-worthiness and self-significance, that I deserve that it's okay for me to do things for myself and not be totally giving all the time. So this is what I mean by the perfection of imperfection is, and I'll start with the second part, life's inherent messiness. Most of our lives have places where they feel messy. It's pretty much true for the great majority of people, in my opinion and experience. And we somehow believe or have been taught that it can be other than this. There's a lot of denial that is used to push away from it. There's a lot of emotional repression that is used to stay away from uncomfortable feelings. I shouldn't be this way. It's not supposed to be this way. It can be some other way. I reached the point of beginning to see that what I have looked at as messiness is not a mistake. It's not healable, so to speak. It's on purpose. There's an uncomfortableness in certain ways in life, and we actually are here for that. because that uncomfortableness actually becomes a motivator for growth. I'm going to finish this one thought. So the perfection of imperfection, by that I mean that we tend to think that imperfection is a flaw. And, you know, I mean, to take it down to a silly level, God could really do better. It's God's fault. I say a lot of it for myself has been in realizing I've been perceiving it incorrectly. I've been interpreting what I see in a certain way, judging it as wrong or bad or defective, when in fact it is and was exactly what it was supposed to be. The good part of this is I don't have to like any of it. I am not unspiritual because various things that I consider ugly and selfish piss me off, make me angry, make me feel angry. That's not wrong. It's not bad. I am entitled to feel that way. The issue is how much energy and time do I want to put into responding to it in that way. And I mean, for me, it's been most of my life, honestly. And see, the beauty in that is we get as long as we want. We get as long as we need. We get as long as we want. You know, there's teachings in some of these approaches that the reason that you have life after life and your bad karma and all this is because you're a spiritual slacker and you missed your opportunities and, you know, you were selfish or oblivious or tuned out or whatever. And I don't look at it that way anymore. I'm not saying every last vestige of that is removed from me, far from it. But these are the deep places of healing wounds and trauma that are in there, that are residue of the past. And that it is about embracing those places in myself that I have been repelled by, pushed away, that I have experienced being judged for. You know, I mean, when you're a child and you're being told that this and that and the other behavior of yours is bad and we don't like it and we don't want that in our family and so forth. Well, how does that child feel in being rejected by their caregivers? As a child, you need adults, parents, to feel safe. And so when we're rejected for being the way we are or parts that we have, we learn to hide those parts away because they're considered bad, unpleasant, not likable, and basically, often enough, the parent stops as conditional love and is loving towards the child when the child is behaving the way the parent wants and is angry at the child when the child is not behaving the way the parent wants. If you look that square in the eye, that's manipulation. The parent is not doing this in a lot of cases because they're horrible people. It's because that's what was done to them. That's how they were raised. That's where their belief system is. And so, of course, they're repeating the pattern. That's how they survived. The point is that, to me, the point of this is that I can't truly be myself living in that box because it goes no place. It goes around and around and around repetitively in very painful dysfunction. And this is all necessary. This has been the hardest part for me to grasp. Because it is out eventually, inevitably, maybe not in this life, out of all of that pain and suffering, the soul, the person, at some point says, there must be more than this, or starts thinking, there must be more than this, there must be more than this. And they start searching and seeking. What is it? What is it? What is it? There's a lot of what I will call false or semi-truthful paths in this world. I've been involved with some. And the interesting thing is that even in them, there is value and there is truth to be learned and wisdom to be experienced. And it's kind of like a mixture of truth and falseness. And this is the journey. This is the journey. We go through this again and again and again and again and again. There is a path. I won't call it a way out because that's, I mean, I have looked at it that way, but that isn't really what it is. There's a truth or an essence inside of us. This comes to mind. I like the fable about the emperor's new clothes. I think it's very symbolic, where these tailors came along and hoodwinked everybody, and the emperor and everybody, and all these beautiful clothes they were making that were invisible. Nobody could see them. And everybody went along with this, you know, oh, what beautiful clothes, da, 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 da. And one little kid goes, you know, mommy, the emperor's got no clothes on. And everybody freaked out because that's the obvious truth. But it was much easier to go along with the pack. I personally think we're seeing a whole lot of that on many, many levels playing out in our world at this time. It is scary to be authentic. Each person, this is what I've come to, each person's authenticity is different or unique to each of us. There's no two with the same essence that is perfectly aligned. Each one of us is this unique expression. And we live in cultures that do not like to honor the unique expressions. They seek sameness. And children are socialized and conditioned to fit in, to keep their behavior in certain realms, their beliefs in certain realms, their outlooks in certain realms. And part of this awakening process of snapping out of this, the way I look at it is the majority of the world at this point is essentially hypnotized. We're living a life in our culture where we're from being born, achievement is one of the great goals. Achieve, achieve, achieve. And you wind up with a whole lot of, my disclaimer on this is, there are a whole lot of people in this world that are doing bloody phenomenal work and things to change, to assist, to help. And nothing I'm saying is to negate that in any way. But the mainstream of the culture is about achieve and accumulate, acquire. And to a great degree, people's sense of self-worth and importance is based on where they measure up to these social standards of accomplishment and acquisition. And that's their identity, which is why If they ever lose that, they fall apart. We have an identity and a sense of worth and value that is inherent to our very existence. Because I am breathing, I am worthy. Because we are all an emanation of divinity, of oneness, of however any individual looks at that or what those words mean to them. There's nothing that I need to do that makes me to be worthy. I am worthy. Even people that do terrible things are still worthy. They have some lessons to learn, but that their actions don't make them unworthy. This is very difficult. I can't say that I live out what I just said about people causing pain and suffering in the world, but I know that what I just said to be true. I'm not there yet, and we're not there yet collectively. The biggest issue to me is the inherent unworthiness that is inside of pretty much most people. It's very well hidden. We don't feel of worth and value because I'm aware of my so-called imperfections. It goes back to the title, The Perfection of Imperfection. I have been conditioned, trained that until I do X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, ABC, then I'm not really using my gift of life. I'm not really, not fulfilling my potential, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think everybody is here to be a big name on the stage of life. I think some people genuinely have that calling. It's part of their soul path. Many, many people don't. And many, many people feel they should be aspiring to more than they actually feel to aspire to, because those are the values that they have been, what I want to say, indoctrinated with. The waking up process, the coming to spiritual awareness, is seeing through all of this and connecting with the places inside that know the inherent value and worth that I am, however much or little that I'm doing externally or even internally. The gift of pain and suffering to me is that at a certain point, we want it to stop. And it takes us beyond beyond my edge of comfort. This can happen in positive, quote, positive applications also. I mean, anything that I feel prompted to do that is growth related is going to take me past my edge of comfort. That's the essence of what growth means. Out of my comfort zone, out of the me, the known self that I think I am. That can be a scary place. There are people that they've learned that lesson and they jump when they need to, when it's coming up. But for a lot of us, it's kind of scary. It's like being vulnerable. You want to do the best, you want to offer, you want to give, you want to share, and somebody is going to be there to criticize what you're doing, misinterpret your motivations, just project their own unhappiness and pain onto you for showing up in a sincere way. This is a whole other set of lessons and knowings that we need to learn in this process of waking up, that inevitably a bunch of crap at different times is going to be, and it really has nothing to do with you. It still stings and it still hurts. And this highlights the places within that still feel unworthy, inadequate, and so forth. And it actually gives us an opportunity to deal with them. Because what I see more and more is my strategy has been to try to run away from the parts of myself that were painful. Shame, a big one, inadequacy, unworthiness, the sense of doing things wrong, not being enough, and so forth. So to push it away as far as possible, to stay as far away from it as possible. And part of that then becomes a defensive strategy, that when anybody speaks or goes within 10 feet of any of those places, the person that's feeling this stuff, which they don't want to feel, instinctually becomes defensive. They push back, or they shut down. There's different strategies. Or one of them is to submit. Oh, I was wrong. I'm sorry I offended you, and all of this. So what I have been realizing over the last couple of years is, even though I don't like the way these things feel, they're really hurt parts of me. They're part of me. They're within me. And I have been rejecting them all my life, pushing them away. So of course, they're hurt, they're angry, they're lonely. The steps of healing along the way include making friends with those very parts within myself, taking them out of the closet, welcoming them to the table, letting them know I understand how you can feel the way you do. You've been made to feel these ways, and I just want you to know it's never really been true. You're not these parts. You're not perfect. Not everything you do is perfect. Not everything I do is perfect. That's what I mean about the perfection of imperfection. In other words, we're learning, growing, evolving beings. We're not supposed to know how to be graceful and skillful in circumstances and situations we've not been in before, or have not really felt comfortable in. We're not supposed to. The natural tendency is to feel, or there is a natural tendency to then feel that this just proves my inadequacy or stupidity or whatever. And that, to me, is what needs to get turned around. And don't turn it around by kicking it in the butt, because they've already been kicked in the butt for decades. They need to be embraced. I've needed to learn how to embrace. I've needed to face my own shame and even my, bad feelings about the way that I have rejected these parts of myself. I have a saying that beating myself up is still beating myself up. The point of it is, when one starts realizing where they have poorly treated themselves lifelong, that then there comes the desire and the intention to turn that around. Okay, I'm going to stop being like that to myself. But then when I notice myself doing the same thing again, I can get mad at myself for doing the very thing I'm trying to change. That's the beating myself up about beating myself up. This sense of self-unworthiness can be so deep. It can be possible that you really can't embrace or love or stop those parts. You're not ready for that yet. You just can't do it. And that's okay. It's okay. So what I've been suggesting recently is, well, if you can't, lev the part that is beating itself up, maybe you can have compassion for the part that's beating itself up about beating itself up. That's a starting point. Because think about what that part feels, that it's treating itself in that way. And we can have compassion for that. This is it's like, I put it sometimes, it's like climbing Mount Everest on foot from North America. Somehow you walk across the ocean. And then you get to the top of Mount Everest. Oh my God, it's taken me my whole life to get here. And lo and behold, behind Mount Everest, you see a mountain that's 3 times taller. And it's not, I don't say that in a groaning way. Because there's a way you look at this, like, this is the way that life is. It's the way that it is. It may not be the way that I wish it was. It may not be what I hoped it could be, but it is the way that it is. That is the reality. And it's not bad. I mean, you can feel exhausted. You can feel like enough. And there are times when enough and a day or a week or a year of rest is quite appropriate. It's the inner integrating of all that is going on. But the whole gist of it is that it's a challenge. A lot of people want to climb Mount Everest. It's not safe. It's not really safe. It's an accomplishment. It's like, I want to challenge myself. I just see more and more. That's why we come here. We challenge ourselves through growth, not just physical activities, but emotional growth, spiritual growth. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. We're not here to fit in and do all the right words and deeds and actions that the society says, or parents, well-meaning parents say. Because if you look around the world that has been created and the way people treat each other from following all those rules is not really what most people would like to see. So it doesn't really work. It's not working the way it's set up, which again is not an accident. It's part of the learning. People that are listening to astrology, especially soul astrology, have come to places where they're already realizing that the way that things are don't really work, because astrology itself is not accepted. At this point, it's increasing, but it's not really accepted as anything valid in the mainstream. So we're seeking these directions. So my whole point is that the unique, quirky, sometimes crazy, sometimes strange, sometimes lonely path that each of us is following, is unfolding, is absolutely exactly the path that for that individual person. We're going to encounter some people who get us and understand, and we're going to encounter a lot of people who partially get us, and we're going to encounter a lot of people who don't really have a clue. And it's all okay. Um, I'm finding myself that the entire lifestyle of, we'll just talk about Western culture, the entire lifestyle, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it really just misses the point in a whole lot of ways. I feel it misses the point in a whole lot of ways. The the endless buying and shopping and running around and filling up time and doing this and doing that and on and on and on and on and on. And it's not, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it no longer works for me. And I feel different and strange in that at times because that's not the norm. And yet I am slowly but surely coming to what I feel like a richness within myself as a result of my willingness, and in some ways I've been forced to survive, of following my individual unique path. And what I say is to anybody, I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that that are in their own versions of what I speak about, what I'm talking about. And I say that no matter how crazy, alone, misunderstood, lonely you may feel at times, you are totally on the path of doing exactly what your soul intends for you to do. Absolutely. I'm going to pause for just a moment to honor that. I'm finding following this path is very rewarding in ways I can't even describe, not in material ways, not in physical ways. There's this sense of authenticity of, oh, this is who I truly, really am. This is what I was born to do. And I'm going to do it. And I encounter people that, are on their own version of it. And we meet and we talk for even a few minutes, and we know that we're what I call listening to the same radio station. And it's very rewarding. And I feel like over time, many long lengths of time, little by little by little, more and more people will be moving into these very directions, many of them forced by suffering. I think COVID has created the enforced isolation. It's created a lot of pain. It's created a tremendous number of people who died and all the suffering of those who survived them and so forth. But it's also driven many people deeper within themselves to really deal with themselves in ways that are not norm in this culture. So it's like a bad thing. It's like a bad thing that has what I call spiritual value. I feel the same is coming with climate change and so forth. circumstances force us to get more real with ourselves. I'm going to stop there. If you if you made it through this talk, I thank you for listening. And you know, sometimes people leave me comments on YouTube that are very touching, and if you feel, you know, I am very open and appreciative if you feel to leave a comment or let me know about what your journey is about and so forth. I would be honored to have that experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Always giving us more to contemplate. We look forward to your next episode.
Thank you.